Hi, I'm Susanna Clark, and welcome to our Leading for Business Excellence podcast. Our podcast brings inspiring stories from across the globe and from a multitude of different sectors. They're with great leaders who share their experience and what business excellence means to them. In this episode, I'm joined by Jade Wilcox. Jade is Managing Director of Wilcox Limousines. And in June 2022, Wilcox won Quality Organisation of the Year in the CQI International Quality Awards. So it was really interesting to hear how Wilcox have transformed over the last 2 years, the business excellence practices that they've adopted throughout the organisation, from production even through to sales and marketing, and that these have led them to winning this award. One of Jade's mottos is, "If it scares me, I do it," whether it's speaking at a conference, attending a networking event, or even being a guest on a podcast. So listen out for her thoughts on overcoming fear and dealing with imposter syndrome. Thank you again for listening, and I do hope you enjoy this episode. So welcome, Jade. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you very much for the invite. I'm honoured.
Well, you say that now.
Yes.
I wondered if we could start with you just giving us a brief summary of your career.
So I was a sister in a private hospital in cardiology. So any heart issues, you're covered.
Okay.
But also, I was a funeral director, so I've got you both ends, Susanna. If you've got a problem,
Thank you so much.
I know just what you wanted to hear. And then I now run my family business, Wilcox Limousines.
And you started off your career as a nurse, a sister, and eventually obviously became a sister. Is that what you always intended to be as you were growing up?
No, if I go to, obviously, when I was a young teen, I was thinking about this the other day. I wanted to be Indiana Jones.
Right.
He gets to go and have adventures, but he is knowledgeable. He's a professor. He's got he's got these skills, but also he goes off and has loads of fun. Or Luke Skywalker, just because you get to swish a lightsaber, save the world, be a hero. But I don't live in a galaxy far, far away.
No.
And I'm pretty sure archaeology does not involve whips and hats. I think that's a different career.
Yes.
Entirely.
But all quite adventurous. That's kind of a
Yes.
theme for both of those.
Yeah, it is. And actually, in my nature, although I do like having adventures, I think it would probably have been a bit too much to have that big an adventure. I think as I got older and I was an older teen, I didn't have much confidence in myself. I thought other people had big, exciting careers. It's not for the likes of me. And I didn't really have, not to the detriment of anyone around me, but I didn't really have any role models that were professional women, if that makes sense, or that worked in corporate or big responsible jobs. Wanted to change the world in my own way and thought, well, how can I help people? And thought nursing. So went into nursing and did really enjoy it. Did really love it, but it does take you have to study a lot, you have to have high levels of knowledge and professionalism, but then it often does feel like it sucks a lot of emotions out of you.
I can imagine.
Nursing,
you
do take, and people, because they're in a stressful time of their life, they demand a lot from you. And after a while, I think a lot of nurses that I've spoken to do find the emotional aspects, but also the fact that most of them have done degrees, and they do further you're studying all the time, but you feel like you don't get much acknowledgement on what you don't have as much autonomy for the skills that you have. I just found it wasn't fulfilling me anymore, so I started to look for something different that would fulfill me, really.
And that led you to look at your family business and
it led me to actually go to. I was talking to my dad, and I was going, I'm really struggling. I don't know whether to leave nursing. I don't know whether to go to something else in nursing. I don't know what direction, and I don't know how to pick. And at the time, he was thinking of stepping back and retiring, and suddenly realized that there wasn't enough of us in the business, and that he had always run it with his brother. And my cousin and sister in the business, but the business had grown since him and his brother had run it, so it needed more people. So he said, why don't you train to be a funeral director and then come and work in the business? There wasn't really any plan. It wasn't like Jade will go into this role. It was Jade will come and learn about funeral directing and then learn about the business. At the time, weren't sure if there was anyone who was going to take over the funeral directing side of our business, and we weren't sure if, and there wasn't enough people in the car side of our business as well.
right.
So I could have gone either way. As it is, there's family members have gone into the funeral side of the business. The family that run that side have got some of their next generation to help, so they've got the second generation running that side. So
And
it's
now
all yes.
You're focused on Wilcox Limousines, and you're managing director.
Yes, and now I'm managing director, which surprises me even sometimes.
Well, it shouldn't surprise you. It shouldn't surprise you, Jade, because you are more than competent. I mean, you've led that business recently to win the award for Quality Organisation of the Year with the CQI. So that is an amazing success for you. How many years have you been managing director of Wilcox Limousines?
I have been managing director of Wilcox since June 2020. So I've been in the business since it was the first week in January in 2017. So 5 and a bit years, really.
So tell me about the having won the award. What it is a testimony to is the business excellence journey that you've been on as an organisation, and you've been on as a leader of that organisation. Can you tell me, what that's been like for you, both you personally and you as a company?
It has been amazing, and it's still amazing that we won the award. It does it's really shown what we've done and what we've learned, and proving to us that everything that we've done is right or a success. And looking back, I still can't believe. So we started the journey when I took over the business. The system we had worked. We were very successful. My father had grown the business from turning over, $1 million a year to turning over, 28 million a year. So he'd grown the business very well, but the business had grown organically from my grandparents' time to his time. He'd used his stamp and his style, but I could see it worked, but it didn't have any processes, structure, or control. And once you get to a certain size, you need that structure and control. And it just, my father had grown it, and uncle, who's passed away, had grown it, but it had started to lose that control as it had grown. It had almost snowballed, if that makes sense. So I knew that wouldn't work as automotive changes, because and for our industry, it stayed quite stagnant for quite a while, and still our customers, funeral directors, are not the most fast moving bunch. They
Mm.
are slow to adapt and change. And so we kind of mirrored that, but I knew everything was going to change very quickly and we'd need to adapt. I saw the NMCL grant. The first day actually that they released it, I was just at an event and talking about it and applied for that, and was successful. First people in automotive to get it, and we got the highest award. And that gave us access to mentoring and tutoring, and teaching to improve, and an improvement program. And we started that in March 2020. And it has literally touched every area of the business. I don't think we would have survived the last 2 years if we hadn't have done this
Mm-hmm.
and learnt all of these tools. It really has. We've changed our future with continuum by using continuous improvement tools. Really.
And so, in terms of, you say it's touched every area of business. So tell me a bit about the production part of your business. So, what do you see are the differences now in how they work?
The production before, someone described it to me as like Bentley, but 30, 40 years ago.
Okay.
Handcrafted, really excellent. Everyone was really good, but everyone is a craftsman who has their own technique and their own way of doing everything. Nothing was consistent and the same. So one person could make a door and then another person would make it slightly different. So every product we made was slightly different
Mm.
because it had that element. So there wasn't that structure and process in. And say from the beginning, if you go from the beginning, with the production, the design is very good. And I'm sure my father has forgot more about building hearses and limousines than most people will ever know in a lifetime.
Yes.
But because we were doing it in I don't want to say non-controlled manner, but it is in a non-controlled manner using the skills and knowledge in people's heads,
Mm.
it meant that we weren't feeding in any designing the vehicles for production. So the
Mm.
production team were always having to look at rework and just innately doing rework as well.
Mm.
And that's something we don't do now. We have a way of managing our rework. So that's one of the biggest changes actually, is the mindset in our production now. Whereas before, when we first started looking at what rework and we started analysing what they were doing, worked out that we had 300 hours on each vehicle
Mm.
of rework, which when you start going, okay, that's £40 per person per hour, plus you lose those hours, so effectively you've lost 600 hours.
Yes. Yes.
That suddenly starts to sharpen your focus. Whereas now they're looking at things and they're going, do you know what, that adds 15 minutes, and they're trying to get rid of things. Some of them are getting down to things that might add 2 to 5 minutes, and going, that we need to find a solution around that. That's not
Mm.
acceptable. Whereas before, and the old phrase they used to always say, well, these are they're hand built cars, you can never get rid of
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Whereas our production they've really shifted their mindset into seeing these issues and feeding them through, but also because we're doing sometimes not as quickly as they'd like us to solve them straight away,
Mm.
but because we're doing something about the issues, they're feeding into us, and that's making our production that much quicker. When we look at our new vehicles, they are 28% quicker to make, which
Wow.
if we made 100 of them, that would add 1.2 million to our bottom line
Mm.
without us
Mm.
actually doing anything, which is good
Mm.
because
Mm.
as cars have become more complex, it's gradually eroded the amount of profit in them for us. So basically, it's just put us back onto a more even
Yes.
keel with things.
Yes. Yes. Because it isn't, as you say, it's not enough to stand still. And as technology changes and as the core original manufacturer changes how they produce their vehicles, you've got to evolve with that, haven't you?
Yes, we do. But without the money that they have, and without
Mm,
the kind of access to knowledge and technology and everything that you leverage by being bigger and having that extra cash behind you. Usually,
mm,
uh, any cash that the business makes is accumulated for the next round of development, really.
mm, mm. And it's not just the production workshop processes, is it, in the business? You've also gone into sales, into marketing as well.
So every single area of the business, from the administration team, the sales, marketing is a huge. You can really see the success on that. Really, they use things like they're using control charts, um, they PDSA. So one of the things, and it's such a small way to do PDSA, but it does make such a big difference. And we kind of picked it up from working with PMI. And after a trade show now, we go and we say we have a Miro board, which is a collaborative, like a sticky note board, isn't it? Where you can,
Mm,
and we find they're really useful actually. I don't think we would have, I'm digressing, but I don't think we would be successful if we hadn't had the virtual technology that everyone's had to shift to.
mm-hmm,
So if we do this in a room with post-it notes, I don't think it works as well as we have a Miro board that is for trade shows.
mm-hmm.
Um, and we'll do all our planning on them, and then obviously have like the spreadsheet or a document for the further more in-depth things. But for all the brainstorming, we have them and we keep them when that's the one, and keep adding to it. So with a show that we did in Paris, afterwards we looked at it and we said, before the show actually, we looked and said, can we recall the last show? What did we like about that show? What do we think we needed to improve about that show? And then after
Mm-hmm.
the Paris show, we did the same. That a few days after we came back from the show, so it's all fresh in everyone's mind. Everyone who went to the show, we spent 15 minutes going, what did we like about it? What was a success? And what would we change in the future? And
Mm-hmm.
kept hold of that. And then this trade show that we did in June in the UK, which is the biggest, there's a national funeral exhibition that no one knows exists unless they're in the funeral industry. But it's
Yeah.
one of the biggest trade show. It is the biggest trade show for suppliers, and it happens every couple of years. Um, Before we did that, we reviewed the notes from Paris, fed into that, and then after the show, the day after we came back from the NFE, got everyone together, and it did only take us 15 minutes where we went, right, what did we really like, and what would we change in the future?
Mm,
And next time we go to the show, the first thing we do in our planning will be to look at that and go, okay, what can we take from these to make the next one
mm.
better?
And I think that review cycle and that sense of
Yeah.
continuous learning,
Yes.
is huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms
And
of the
it's not,
impact it has.
it is, and it's not a complex thing to do once you get your
Mm,
head round it.
mm. Yes. Yes,
But
I like the fact, as you say, it takes you 15 minutes actually because you become used to following that process. So you can
yes,
operate the process very quickly.
yes, and everyone knows what the aim is from it, and everyone buys into it.
Mm,
No, it didn't at the beginning when we first started. It didn't click, but it's over the last, say, six, maybe a bit more than 6 months for some of the team, much earlier, but for most of the team, the last probably 6 months to 9 months, everything's starting to click, and you start to see more and more people actually realise
Mm.
the reasons why doing things in a set way.
So do
Really.
you feel now that you've got the whole organisation on board with working in this way?
Oh my goodness, no. No, definitely not. Um, Anyone who knows manufacturing will know that there is always a core group of people who are very vocal, and there's still some that definitely don't buy into it or don't understand it. Could be they haven't been close enough, they haven't felt and seen the changes, but also might be uncomfortable with the change. Certainly, I know from the feedback there's some of them that definitely don't believe I'm a leader. Apparently,
Okay.
there is some, but that's okay. They just don't know how amazing they've got it.
So how do you cope with those people who still haven't, you've got probably the majority of Wilcox Limousines who are focused on working through these new ways, using processes, considering PDSA, review, learning, and so on. And then you've got this other set who aren't quite on board yet. How are you managing to keep bringing them with you?
So just keep banging the drum, really, and keep trying, pulling them with us. Obviously, if people step over boundaries in behaviour, then we have to deal with that.
Mm.
But just keep going, and they will either come with us or through one way or other, or they decide not to really. It is
Mm.
hard though not to take it personally. There is times, especially the more vocal of people, they can be, they are the kind of characters that will niggle and get under your skin or try
Mm-hmm.
to get under your skin. But that's almost part of being in the role I'm in, or anyone who's in any leadership role. They will get criticized. It's very easy to look at people, and especially when you don't have the full facts,
Mm.
because obviously we don't tell everyone everything that's going on with the business. So of course you're going to criticize when you see something on the outside. We all do it, don't we?
Mm. Mm. So as a leader and having, worked through a business transformation, what do you see that's different for you now leading the company?
It's easier for me to lead
Okay.
now because we have systems in place and there's less firefighting.
Mm-hmm.
But also we can deliver our strategy. We actually have a strategy. So one of the things that was built up our strategy, which then gives, and I love a Hoshi matrix. But I have to feed that in because I think I might be in the rarity. But we only do the first level of Hoshin. We don't go on to do more complex because we're a smaller business. So maybe if we had the second level, I wouldn't love it.
Who knows?
Maybe if I had to deliver it to satellite places all around the world, maybe I wouldn't love it.
But it's always about use the bits that work for you, isn't it? And you're right,
Yes, exactly.
adjusting to the size of organisation you are makes complete sense.
Yes, no, it does. It does. It would be way too. It would just be admin for admin's sake.
Mm.
Um, but having a strategy and having that cycle means that I have the comfort and the confidence that we're not going to let things creep up on us.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a plan. We're not going to say allow electric vehicles to suddenly arrive in
Mm.
2030 and we've not done anything about it. We do have a plan.
Mm.
And that gives me the confidence that we're moving forward. But then that also as well, hopefully, gives for we have seen a difference with our employees, and you can feel the difference in our culture. But because we've communicated the strategy to our employees, people start to know what direction we're going in, and they feel part of that direction, and then they input into that direction, and it starts to shift our culture as well, and change that really. And the other thing that's really changed for us is communication. We've upped so sorry, Susanna, I'm going to have a drink and then I'll come back to
That's all right. No.
So because we've wanted to communicate our strategy to our employees, but also get the feed in, because they have an immense amount of knowledge themselves. Most of our employees have been working with the business for at least 12 years, some of them 20 odd. They know a huge amount. We've been looking at our team leaders, and we have a month, twice a month meeting with them about strategy, but also about HR issues and about the process mapping they're doing, everything, and 5S, and just really supporting them, but also gives them an opportunity to communicate to the leadership team. And having that communication then gives me the comfort that I know things are moving in the right direction, really. But it also obviously helps shift the culture as they feel supported, and as they start to feed in things that we're feeding into them, that helps as well. We
The
did,
sense of being heard, and
yes,
that
yes,
their views, their opinions, their knowledge, as you say, for a number of years they've worked for
yeah,
you, is being used
yeah.
for the better of the business.
We do try to balance it out, obviously, because we can't do everything that everyone wants all the time, but do also try to feed back into people. So another area where it's given the leadership that sense of that we are moving things forward, but also that we've got control of the business and oversight of it, is we've got team boards in production, and they have huddles as well, morning and afternoons. That feeds in if there's any issues. So each kind of cell or each group has their huddle, and then they come and feed to our production manager, who has his own board as well. And that just gives that, it improves the communication, because everyone's got the issues and everyone can put something on the boards, and if they've got an issue or they've got something they'd like to raise, or they think that there's needed a piece of equipment, and you can feed back to people, well, yes, that's going to happen, but it's not going to happen till 6 months time, or no, that's not going to happen right now, but you feed back the reasons why. But it also, it means that you've got that two-way conversation. You're keeping that beat of the drum going. Everyone knows what's happening.
I know when we first met, one of the things that you talked about was your ambitions for growth, including growth outside of the UK and perhaps into the EU market, and some concerns, let's say, that you had about your ability as an organisation for price and quality in those markets. Have you done any work on that in terms of understanding where you might be able to go to compete effectively now?
So within our strategy, we've looked, and we've got a international strategy, and we've done market research, and because as well we've always sold internationally, and before I joined the business built a vehicle for the international market, and they did do market research, but I think because they hadn't got the real structure that we have now for market research and analysis, and looking at that data, the Plan Do Study Act, again, strangely enough, the vehicle wasn't quite built to how the market wanted it. It worked, but
Mm-hmm.
some markets it didn't. I think we tried to cover that. People will be surprised, but every country in Europe seems to have a slightly different style. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't do a catch-all.
Mm.
You almost need to do a configuration for each country. Also, because our design, we didn't have any kind of real robust new product introduction process, which we do now.
Mm-hmm.
So the design of the vehicle meant that we had a lot of rework in it. So it took a lot of hours. So we were having to, our price was having to be reflective of the time and money it was costing us. Whereas
Yeah.
now, because we've got that new introduction process, plus we know how to deal with rework, plus because we fed in all the pieces from the rework and our warranty, because we have a warranty tracking system as well. Because when we're designing a vehicle now, we're feeding those in and going,
Mm-hmm.
right, so say one of the areas that always is a high use part in a hearse is the tailgate. You're going to be opening it and putting coffins in a lot more than you probably would a standard saloon vehicle. So you need to think of that whole area and mechanism and making sure that it's right for repeated use. With our new vehicles, we've looked at them and designed it and looked at how many cycles of use it will have, and will that fit for that design, whereas we didn't look at it as robustly before. So this was a long waffle for the, for international. At the moment, we haven't got we've got one product that might work, but yes, international is something now I can easily see how we could do that.
Right.
Before, and we could do it within the price the international market demands, but also to a high quality standard that would save us the stress, because we're a small business. We're not, I don't know, the Fords, the Volkswagens of the world where there's a whole network. If we have a warranty issue, someone might have to get on a plane and go to Germany, wherever, France. So would much rather have vehicles that don't have those issues. Would much rather have them anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Indeed.
it becomes that much more expensive and complex for international. So, and international is definitely in our sights. We just need to sell the UK ones to fund the next round, really.
Absolutely. Brilliant. And you mentioned when we were talking about the people in the business that there are some people who perhaps don't think that you are a leader. And you and I talked about what it's like to take over from, and I hope your father won't mind me saying, a big, strong, autocratic leader, which is very different from the type of leader you are. So how have you managed that? Or how are you managing it? Because obviously it's ongoing.
Yeah. So for a start, I thought maybe I need to mirror him and be him. And then pretty early on, I realised, I was like, no, because that's not who you are, and that will just never work. It will never work. And also for his generation, that style worked, and I think our culture has shifted away from that. And also, it works on a smaller team, doesn't it? But as you get bigger, they're always going to get people, and we've seen it within the business, who will very much pay lip service to that autocracy, but then behind your back, they're doing their own thing.
Yes.
And they're very good at kind of hiding what they're actually doing. And we definitely don't want that. So sometimes it has been very hard, and sometimes the way I've dealt with it is having a glass of wine at the end of the evening and thinking, that's it. But most of the time it's by being consistent, having the processes in place, treating everyone, trying to have that consistency of the way we treat everyone, but also having boundaries in place, because I'm not that big 6 foot odd, big male leader. People will try and step over the line, and they do. And it's just kind of making sure we keep that boundary in place. And also really understanding. And so I've done a lot of research and reading and studying and listening about leadership. And often the theories are that often people do want someone to tell them what to do. But actually, that doesn't work. That's fine if it's an emergency situation.
Yeah.
But even then, it doesn't necessarily work, because so I listened to the audiobook Black Box Thinking recently, and he was referencing, and I've seen it within the NHS, he was referencing incidents that happen with in the NHS, where people are too afraid because of the big autocratic leader to speak up when something's wrong, even though they
Yes.
know something's wrong. So we know it doesn't work. So it's almost having that determination to go, actually, no, I know that a more collaborative but adaptive leadership style works. We know that it helps with complexity. We know that if people feed in, we know that more brains are better than one brain. As amazing as I am, my brain does not know everything. And
Yes.
having other perspectives in the world works. And almost just ignoring the people that don't like it because it's their discomfort, it's not mine. They don't need to. If they are voicing, you have to listen and think, right, have they got a point? Is there something we've missed here? Is there something we need to learn from here? If otherwise, if there isn't a point, or they haven't got the full picture and they don't know what's going on in the background, then okay, even though I said you must listen to people, you don't listen to necessarily that, because it's unnecessary noise.
Trying to sift through which is going to actually give you the
Yes,
value.
and it is hard, and it is especially, say, our first employee survey. Oh my goodness, it was essay length. It's brilliant, people wanted to feedback, but it was essay length things. Apparently business will be closed by the end of the year. Well, it's 18 months later, we're still open. Apparently I'm not a leader, and it's like, well, we're still here. So
yes, but also that sort of feedback is only helpful if it's then backed up by a series
if
of,
it's
and therefore what you
constructive.
need to do are, yes, exactly.
Yes. So
Yeah.
one of the other things that we've become good at is kind of pushing it back to being constructive. Okay. So what do you think we should do about that? What is the solution? And kind of getting people to think, instead of just getting people to have someone to have a, I don't know, a moan, or someone to dislike. Some people always have to have someone to moan at or about, don't they?
Yes, indeed. So when we were talking recently, one of the things we were discussing was you joining me on the podcast, for which I'm very grateful for you to come along. But also, you talked about recently being asked to speak at a conference, and that both of these had made you slightly uncomfortable, whatever the right word is. But you said generally your theory on life is that if it scares you, then you do it. So, which I think is a great philosophy. But can you tell me about that? What does that mean to you?
So for me, I don't know when I came up with this. I think it was after. So always kind of struggled with self-talk and like imposter syndrome, but also just generally my self-talk. And it really did start to affect my career, affect my life, and affect probably my mental health. I was getting palpitations and kind of anxiety, and quite heightened levels of anxiety when my daughters were um I don't know, a lot younger, just in beginning of primary school. I thought, can't go on like this. And started to do some work, CBT, which helps you look at your self-talk and
Mm-hmm.
helps you start to question things. So it really helped me with imposter syndrome as well, where you still go, and I still catch myself doing it sometimes.
Yes.
Um, but where you go, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm winging it, which, like most people, are winging it in life. Um, but
Mm.
also that, well, they know what they're doing. Look at them; they know what they're doing, and it's like, do they know what they're doing? Really, really? Does anyone? Um, but then, as I was doing that, there was lots of times when I was like, "Oh, I'm a bit nervous to do that, but I want to do it, but I'm a bit
Mm-hmm.
scared." And I was suddenly like, right, no, if it scares you, do it. So I can't remember what it was that I did. I know what it was. And it sounds very silly and completely not business, but gave me the confidence um, within business to start to do things. The more and more you do the things that frighten you, but that you want to do, or sometimes the things that you frighten you and you don't want to do, the more confident you become in yourself. So the more confident you become in your professional life,
Mm-hmm.
really. And that's where I've noticed it has given me this self-assurance that I can then go, oh God, I've got to go and speak, or I've got to go and network at this thing and I don't know anyone. Um, but it's all right. I can do this. I could go and do it. And yes, I may be a bit nervous, but it will be fine. Um, I was trying. I've lost my train of thought now. It was, what did I do? What was the first thing I did? Held a tarantula. I hate spider. Oh,
Okay.
I don't hate spiders anymore because I've spent a long time working on the fact that I don't hate spiders anymore. I would still struggle if one, giant one comes and sits on me, but I don't, because I was at an event and they had loads of creepy crawlies, and I've had different pets over the years, and they had rats, which I've had as a pet, and I know are really great pets, and had what else did they have? Ferrets there, and people were freaked out a bit by the both of them, and I was like, don't be ridiculous, or snails or snakes, and and
Mm.
then the tarantula comes up, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
then going, well, hang on, why is that fear different to, how come? Okay, you need to deal with this fear. So I went and
Mm.
held the tarantula and I survived, and then thought, okay, every time I get that feeling, maybe you need to deal with the
Mm.
fear. Doesn't mean
Mm.
necessarily that this fear that keeps you safe, like it's not a wise
Mm.
idea to jump off a cliff. That's a kind of, that keeps you safe. But there's also fear that
Yeah.
has no grounding and is not, you know, I know we can't control it, but it's that base instinct, isn't it? And you can't control it perspective, but the more and more you learn to react to it, the better you get at kind of managing your reactions, really.
Yeah, and create some coping strategies.
Yes.
You know, I remember talking to a coach about an event that I had to do. I was incredibly nervous. I mean, ridiculously nervous to the point of wanting to be sick. And I thought this is I'm going to make this even worse than it already is. And spoke to a coach, and they gave me some fantastic coping strategies, things that I needed to do, and I have used those again and again whenever that fear has come to me. So you have to find what works for you, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. And I think for me, obviously, it was finding just small physical things, I think, that made me a
Mm-hmm.
bit nervous, but then transferring that into other things. So now, with when someone asks me to do a podcast, I say yes.
Brilliant.
I met someone randomly at a friend's party. So I went to I would never have done this before. I went to a party and it was only me. My husband couldn't come along. I didn't have any other friends going, and I didn't know anyone there. But I was like, I've got to go to this friend's party. It's important. It's an important life, important life event for her. I'm not letting her down. I'm going to the party. And chatting, got to talk to some amazing people and had a really great time, but was chatting to someone about business and everything. And they invited me to talk at an event. I was like, oh my goodness. But I said yes. And I talked at the event and I survived. And I learnt from it. And I've been asked to talk at a few more events. So I can use those tools that I learnt there and just keep improving my skills in it, really.
Yeah. And facing into it.
Yes.
So who out of, in your career, who would you say has been the most significant influence on your career? Or not necessarily who, but what would you say has been the most significant influence on you as a leader?
I think it's lots of small things and lots of small people and interactions and just taking that from people. When I was thinking about this the other day and I was thinking, well, who? And there's just lots of things. So when I first started working in cardiology, I worked with this great nurse, and she's not very big. She's not very loud. She's not very big, but she has a quiet level of insistence if something isn't right or if something needs to be done a certain way. And she will just voice it, and almost the way she voices it, it's like, well, no, we need to do it this way. And everyone from the most junior people of the team to the top cardiologists who can be a little bit big and brash in their personalities and end towards the autocratic side, even they will listen because it's the way of that insistence or that just, no, this is what we're going to do. So, but then she also will lead people in a talk to people and collaborate and work, but then we'll step into, I don't know, command and control or a leadership role. I'm not describing it very well.
Command and control, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like, as you said, if you need to fight a fire, then you need to be someone has to be in command and in control.
Yes.
Don't they have to lead at that point.
Yeah. Which is interesting because most of the time you'll read and people will swing and go, oh, we should only be doing it this way. But that's not how it works, isn't it? Sometimes you do need to be command and control and say to people, no, this is the way we're going. I'm always surprised when I hear those businesses that they don't have, like the flat ones that don't have any leadership. I'm like, I don't think that works with human nature. And it's digressing. But when you look at, say, communism or those powers, there's always someone, if someone doesn't step into power, there will be someone who will want to grab that power for their own ends, really. And if you, in leadership, if you don't have that someone is ultimately responsible, then you will get power structures and you might get those vocal people. So one of the culture things that we've seen is obviously those very vocal people will often try and grab power or control the rest of the team or things like that. And if you don't manage that, then what you have is this, I don't know, group, this subculture that you can't control.
And then starts to emerge, as you say, into taking power itself. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, go on.
No, I was going to say that someone who, so I really like the Matthew Said books. They make a lot of sense, but done a lot of different reading around leadership once I started to realize I quite enjoyed doing this and actually stopped having the self-talk of you're not a leader, you can't do this, to actually you're quite good at noticing, like interweaving all these different elements and being a, you know, having a little knowledge about lots of different things but not much knowledge about any one big thing. But really started to study, but also noticed that I really like persistent people that just keep going. So one that I noticed recently was Maggie Oliver, the police, the ex-police officer who quit because of the Rochdale child abuse ring. She's like, no matter what was thrown at her, she's really persistent, and even now is pushing for changes to the system and pushing for changes to the culture. So I really admire those people that kind of just keep banging the drum, really.
Yes.
For their goal.
Yes, it's somebody once described this to me as having a true north, and that true north was what was driving people towards it, and they weren't going to give up. It was just absolutely within them.
Yeah.
To pursue that.
Yeah, no, that's a good. I've heard that before as well. It's a good good expression. You just got to hope they're going in the right direction, and because there's some people that don't, think they're going their way when they should be going that way. But yes.
So in your time as a leader, from obviously you've read a lot, you've worked on a business transformation of Wilcox Limousines. If somebody came to you for advice on what makes a great leader, what would you say to them?
I'd say it was situation dependent, really.
Okay.
And it's very hard to see it as it's happening. You can try and model yourself to be one, but you're modeling on the past, not on what's happening. So probably a great leader needs to actually know what's going on, plan, do, study, act, and adjust which way you're going by the data you're getting fed back to you, so that you're always changing and always improving, really. And that it's also perspective dependent for people. That I am sure that, well, I know there is people in the business who say that I am not a great leader, and that's fine. And for other people in the business, they will be happy and they will say, no, this is the right direction. But you're only going to really measure that after the facts, aren't you, as well? And hindsight is always a great thing and always looks rosy and lovely and everything's great, isn't it? I always think persistence as well, so that your true north thing, keep pushing if there's something that you know is right. So there's example I have where within the business we knew we'd got all this data from the rework, we'd got all this data from warranty, we'd got data from looking at everything that was basically going wrong with our products or that was adding extra time, and realized from that we needed to look at our introduce new products process, but also look at the way we were producing and our materials. So we used to build hearses and limousines mostly using hand lay up glass fiber. So the hearse bodies hand lay up glass fiber, and obviously you can imagine hand lay up, there's a difference in consistency because it's a human thing. And everything, even with a mold, it's going to be slightly different, and the material is not as stable. It expands and contracts and things. So we realized that material wouldn't work. But the problem is And we were using, like, say, metal doors or bits and pieces, or hand GRP for the bumper. And we realised pretty early on that we needed to go with a more consistent material. But the problem is our teams were very used to reworking, bashing about basically, or sanding down or filling in areas to get things to fit. But we knew, right, if we go for this to get rid of these issues and to make us more consistent, and if we to get rid of these 400 hours of rework, we need more consistency in our product, in our processes, and in our production and our materials. So therefore we need to go for a different material that can't shift, can't change, and we need to make sure it precisely fits, the body precisely fits, and then the doors precisely fit. And in order to do that, we're going to have to do that in CAD, which is something we'd used before, but we hadn't used it fully to construct a vehicle. And to do that, we're going to have to use this material that you can't sand down, that you can't change, but it is a lot lighter as well. So that was good as well, because cars are getting heavier and heavier and the payloads are getting less and less. But we knew there was a core group of us who knew, right, we have got to work on this material, work on the design, make sure that's all right, and then make sure our processes and we have that consistency. Everyone, there is no way. So things that we did say is we made sure there's no way that someone can locate something in a slightly different area. So we designed it so that you can only locate that part in that area. But our team didn't know, obviously didn't tell all 70 people within the business this is what we're doing, because it's quite hard. It was a long perceptual shift for us in the leadership team. It took a while for my leadership team to get where we were going and understand it and fully buy into it. But once they bought into it, they understood. But we knew we were doing this, but the rest of the team didn't. So there was a lot of pushback and a lot of issues thrown up, but we just had to keep being persistent of going, no, this is the way we're going, this is the way we're going, this is the way we're going, and persistent with pushing through those changes that we knew would help this function, and the teaching and teaching people about what we're doing and everything, because we knew it would all help to go in line with this plan. And it's 2 years down the line, and there was times when we just thought, oh my God, we're never going to get there. Or just when you think that some of the team have got it, they don't. I mean, when people first found out what we were going for, I had like essay length letters, multiple letters about how it wouldn't work. But now we've proven it works, because it would say a bumper used to take us 30 to 40 hours to fit. Now we could fit it in an hour easily. And that makes sense. And we can take it off of one car and put it on another car, which we wouldn't have been able to do before without adjusting it or tweaking it. But it did take a lot of persistence, and we did get a lot of pushback from people not seeing the bigger picture and not really understanding, not having the information that we had.
So there's something about persistence and communication and learning and PDSA and data. That's what I'm hearing from you in terms of how to be a great leader and how to put that all together to help bring the people with you.
Yeah, and listening to, even though I've said we didn't listen to the team in some bits, listening to the team, but knowing which bits to pull out and which bits to use, and which bits to kind of not ignore, but just to go, okay, that's not relevant to what we need to achieve here, really. And to keep communicating with the team. So one of the things that when we were building the new products is getting the teams around and sometimes we even knew that what they were communicating we didn't really need to know, but allowed them to carry on communicating that and feeding that in because you never know what you're going to miss that you did need an information, and it's about giving them the comfort and the confidence that things are moving forward, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And bringing them with you.
Yeah.
Jade, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time today and for sharing your stories with us. I think it's a fascinating journey. And again, congratulations on your CQI Award, Organisation of the Year.
Thank you very much.
And to everyone in the Wilcox team, it's an amazing achievement. And I know it's been a lot of hard work, so congratulations.
It is amazing. It is down to everyone's hard work, really. Everyone in the business has been involved in it in some way. So
yeah, brilliant.
It's down to them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you again to my guest, Jade Wilcox. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this episode of PMI's podcast, Leading for Business Excellence. Of course, you can access all of our previous podcasts on your favourite podcast hosting service. If you'd like to know any more about how you can develop your career in business excellence and transform your organisation, then please do drop us a line, team@pmi.co.uk. I'd really love to hear from you.